But again, if you have any questions at any point, you can just feel free to ask in the chat. We'll keep an eye for you there. All right, Pamela.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm Pamela, and it's wonderful to be back here with Thrive and also with all of you. And if you do have questions, you put them in the chat, and then at the end, I'm going to share a few slides, but we will have time for you to share any reflections or ask questions. I'm a Montessori parent and a grandparent. I've been administrating and teaching in Montessori for over 40 years. And at present, I own a school called Nido Montessori, which is a place where parents, grandparents, and caregivers attend classes from pregnancy up through age 7, those different classes with their children. So I'm working with the adults as much as I am with the children. Tonight, I have a certain focus, and I'm going to go ahead and screen share and then just share a few things with you, and then we'll be together, but then we'll come back together. Okay? All right. So this is called Montessori Lifestyle Values Within the Family. And we will come back. We will really, this is a contemplation and an exploration around this idea, which is not a stagnant one, I feel. And I will share my experience over the years of being with families and being, again, a Montessori parent and now a grandparent. So the lifestyle values within our family, let's explore a little bit. And I have here, what are values? And here's this child. What are values? Our values, are they roles? Are they stagnant? Are they something that are written like as a checklist? Are they something that we are told? Or could they perhaps be something that are experienced? And I have this little circle here, and I say fluid here, fluid. I'm going to share my understanding, my experience, my maybe defining of this, but I'd love to hear later what your contemplations are. And if we think, one way that I have worked with families over the years, because I also, one thing I didn't mention is, as a Montessorian, I've been attending births since 1986. And so I work with families during pregnancy and early in life, if I'm with them at that time, or if they are with me, whenever they come to me. This is something that I bring as a question to just consider. And I do use the word values because I want to also hear, we all have our own ways of even defining what that means through our own growing up, don't we? Like what is that? And so sometimes I'll have an open conversation around, if you were to think of even what values are, and I may hear a lot of what values were for them growing up. You know, values to be respectful, to listen, to be kind, to love, to take care of, to listen again to your elders, many of these things that will come up. And then I try to open that up a little bit more even as to what that might mean. What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to listen? What might that experience be like? Rather than it just being this, and even then the experience that I've found with really, it doesn't matter which child this is that we're contemplating as parents, but in our parenting, one thing that's been sort of surprising over the years when I asked this is it's hard at the beginning, and it was hard for me at the beginning as a parent. My children are 38 and 35, my sons, for my husband and I to consider what are our values as a family? What's important to us? What is something that we have what we know, and now we're coming into our own essence as being parents. Well, what does that mean? And in Montessori, one thing that I found kind of merged with this is the words that you may have heard or heard even definitions of or are experiencing, and that's grace and courtesy. Grace and courtesy. But to kind of think about what values are, what's important, I feel is helpful, and we'll talk more about why that might be helpful. This child is wondering about that, I think. So we saw in the circle and the word fluid that there's movement there. So it's not a noun, it's more of a verb, values. And I feel they are a living and an internalized practice. As much of life is, we are practicing as we are together here now, and we practice through our bodies and through all of our senses, through our lives. On the left-hand side, coming back to when I talked about being with parents, maybe in pregnancy, or even I remember for myself, I found it helpful to, in considering this, think about what my intentions were as a parent, what my intentions were and what they are as a parent still and as a grandparent. And intentions to me are different than motivations. Motivations are more what I do to get something. It's a little more externalized than internalized motivations. Intentions, for me anyway, come more from within. And to strengthen those intentions over the years of being a parent and a grandparent, I have found that coming into even like 3 intentions or values or roles, if we want to use that word, has been helpful for me. As sort of a compass almost to return to. The other part I have here is modeling, because as adults, we are, if we are living a practice and we are as a parent or a grandparent, or maybe we don't even have children, but we are with children, we are modeling for the child all of the time. They are watching us, they are looking to us to orient, to learn about life from the moment of, well, I think prenatally too, but the moment of birth as to where am I? I know who you are, but where am I? What happens here? What is happening? In many moments, children looked to us for that. And I think of modeling as being natural. So again, if we're having those values and we are moving into a natural practice of those because we've considered them deeply, then that modeling comes forth. And I mean, I make mistakes all of the time, and that's part of the learning as well. The other thing I wanted to say is I have hundreds and hundreds of times been asked by parents and I remember thinking of this myself, so I resonate deeply with this question. But maybe I'm in a class with parents with infants or whatever age child they are. They're younger, so they may be from prenatal up to age 6. And the parent might ask, well, I'm really wondering about what happens, and here we have an infant. What will happen when she starts walking? How will I prepare the space for that? What will happen when he begins to uh, be with others and maybe hurt someone? Or what will happen if my child isn't uh, moving in the same ways or speaking at the right time? All of these questions, which are very much in the future, and they're linked in with the past of our own worry. And I place present moment here because what my intention when I'm with other parents, and I'm with them daily and have been for so long, is when those questions come to invite them to come to the present moment of now. Your child is here right now, right here. And to just take some breaths and see if you can come to be here in this moment and to see your child who is a full personality and to maybe release little by little those questions that stem more from something maybe rising up within us. And this all centers on observation. It does, in Montessori, we talk about observation so much, but it's not unique to Montessori. We are observing each other right now. Observation is a natural practice, it's a natural thing that happens. We observe, and observation can become something that we bring attention and intention to. So that if we have our child, no matter what age they are, if we can come as much as we can in the present moment and observe what's happening before us, that is what we might call the external observation. But the most important observation is the inner observation of what's happening within us, which I just kind of gave an example of with asking the questions of what happens then, even with infants when they're a teenager or college, these things that when we are parents, for me anyway, I would be thinking all this way and I could make myself kind of crazy. And so to come back to the present and observe, and then at another time, I find it helpful to just jot down even what those thoughts or feelings were that were coming up on me that really didn't have to do with what I'm seeing, but they're inside of me. over here on the right, I have touchstone, and I mentioned the word of the child with orientation, that we are, as parents, we are the people, we are their people who they look to, and we can become the touchstone for them throughout life. Again, my children are, they're grown, and yet they're always my children, and they will return to me as, and my husband, as a touchstone. And what I've experienced is that in early parenting, the more that myself and my husband, that we could sit with the defining in a visceral way, in a living way, what our values and intentions were, that created more of a centering within us. And so our children will still come back and touch in with both of us. Because I mean, maybe sometimes I'm not very present and I'm not available, but if I can be present to them, then I'm there. Some of the expressions that I've noticed in adults and children, I'm listing some here. And for the adults, I've experienced for myself, and I've seen over and over again, that when we begin to live within some kind of values that are they become a lifestyle, that we are more receptive to our children. We're less reactive, we're more receptive. We are more even in wonder of our child, which is expressed in many ways that we'll talk a little bit about. But the word wonder is one that holds such expansion. And if we had reactive there, I couldn't put wonder underneath. So wonder and curiosity of our child. And another thing is that the vision of the child or children and of the adult, there's an essence of autonomy that occurs, I've noticed, where when we can think of maybe the word of value, if we were to give a word to one of respect. And respect can seem like just a word, but if it's a practice, then respect can be something like, I respect you and I respect myself. So I just had parent group 2 evenings ago, and we talked just about this with something that was being shared, that in the moments with children where maybe something's going on and something's up and we're not sure perhaps what to do, to consider that you can be respectful of your child and respect yourself at the same time, which is modeling to a child that I am seeing you as a person, and it's their choice whether they see us as a person, but we are showing ourselves as a person who is with them and yet separate and has autonomy. And the times when children are moving through expression of the will, which is what should be celebrated, those moments, the expression of the will, and no, and which is a way of saying see me, see me. We can honor that autonomy and also honor our own. So that could be a value, perhaps. This is a quote by Maria Montessori from the 1946 London lectures. And she says, adults must defend children. We adults must see the real humanity in children, the humanity which will take our place one day if we are to have social progress. I really resonate with this quote, and when I was contemplating what I was going to share this evening, this quote came to mind along with what I just shared with autonomy. And, the path of the adult and the path of the child, we walk different paths. We converge and we come together, but the child from the moment of birth begins to move away from us. And then they come back, and then they move away more, and they come back. And that happens all through our lives. I know with my mother, when she was living, I was very much with her and would go to her. So we are, as we model and as we live what we are speaking, and as we model with our actions what we are saying, then I feel that this is true. So this is a photo of my present school in Nido Montessori. And this is a parent at the school who attended Montessori when she was a child. And she is presenting a lesson with the sound cylinders to this child. She has been at Ananda now for 5.5 years attending. She has 3 children. She's coming and she's, as I said, she is learning deeply just as the child is learning. So what happens after Montessori? They come back because I want to share a little story about my son, Seth. Seth and Eli, my children attended Montessori from the time that they were always with me in my school that started in 1981. And then in middle school, they transitioned to the school that's right behind our house, actually, the middle school, so a public school. But they had been in Montessori prior to that for all those years. Seth also trained as a Montessorian, and he taught in a Montessori 3 to 6 class, or ages 3 to 6, for over 10 years. And one evening, I've had monthly parent groups since 1989, all year through the summers. And we were having parent group, and this question I have been asked so many times, and I asked this question when my children started school. I remember asking the man who would be my mentor and I learned everything from, what happens after Montessori? Again, can you be present to where you are? Can you be present to here? And so at this group, Seth was sitting beside me, and someone asked this question, what happens after Montessori? And I turned to Seth and I said, Seth, I'm going to have you answer this, if you will. And his answer was, we come back. That was his answer. And he physically came back and he taught for all those years. And that is true with Kate here, and was true with Seth. And at one point I had both my sons and my two daughter-in-laws, they were in my staff. But Seth and Eli attended Montessori as children. I will never, I've been doing this for over 40 years. And this is my practice, but I will never, ever have the understanding of Montessori internally that the child has. I will never have that. And what I would love, I was head of school and I also was teaching at the same time. I love to go down to Seth's room. I would go to all their rooms, to check in and maybe observe and give guidance. I would love to observe in the classrooms, and I love to observe Kate, where they have a way with the materials that are very different from adults. They remember them. You can see it in the way their face lights up when they see the materials. Like when Kate came back into Montessori, and she's actually doing her 3 to 6 training right now as well. But her memory, oh, I remember this, and the way she would take the material and very carefully take it and explore it, not like she's a child, but that's within her. And I would see that in Seth, and I would also see this way that he was able to, if you're with the child and there are what we call points of interest in any material. Doesn't have to be a Montessori material, but it could be a water bottle, a point of interest in that. What is it that interests the child in that moment? It could be outdoors, it could be a tree, it could be anything, it could be the sound cylinders. What I notice is that for him, he had a way of understanding where the child was that was different than the adults would. Like he could get it and differently than the adults. And then he would offer something that I've never seen an adult do before. And the child would be right there with him. It was like he was in the living memory of being in that experience. Because for me anyway, I feel that Montessori is a living practice within not just me, but within all of us. There are many teachings and studies and classrooms, but it's not dependent on a physical environment. It's not dependent on the physical materials. It's not dependent on those as the curriculum, because when we're in a classroom or we're with children, the child is the curriculum. We are the curriculum as well, because we're always learning. And here we are at Ananda again in the same area. Ananda is one big room that's about 2,000 square feet. And this is towards the front. And in the 12 years that Ananda Montessori has been happening, I've had 7 children come and be in Ananda, and their parents, I was their teacher in Montessori. And I got Robbie's permission. This is Robbie, and he was my student from the time he was 3 till he was 6. And this is his son. And they now have a newborn as well. So Robbie and his son attend Ananda. And these are some things I'm going to get to these words in a moment. You can certainly look at them. But I just wanted to share a few things that I've always noticed with people who come into my classroom environments. I may have been their teacher, or they may have been in my school. There are certain things that I've noticed again and again with them. And that is, one of them is that they always come down to the floor with the child. There's no kind of standing around and looking, where's my place? I'm not sure what to do. Somebody tell me, or maybe because at Ananda I'm guiding the adults, I may go over and say to someone, you can sit wherever you'd like, but they will come and always come low, come low. And the other thing is they give that space that you see Robbie's giving to his son. Rather than being on top, giving that space. And also the other thing that I have always seen is that I feel the memory in the adult of choosing materials. So they observe their child exploring and then choosing something. And then they observe their child with those materials and are very quiet, and they do not disturb. Like there's not a lot of talking. Oh, you have the cylinder. I wonder where that will fit. Well, maybe you could put it here. And you see where Robbie's hands are? They're right in his lap. Because this was modeled for him. This was modeled for him, not just in our school back in 1981 or in the early 80s when he came, not just with us, but in his family as well, who I knew quite well. So these are some things that Robbie wrote down for me as reflections. He said that coming, although I don't feel it ever leaves us, so I'm returning here, but there was a reopening of my vision of the needs of children and adults when he when he first walked in the doorway into the environment that was familiar to him. It was a memory for him, and it was tangible. And he said that he remembers moving and exploring and using my hands. And I remember him as a child being so full of curiosity, of wonder, energetic, wanting to move. And we would meet him right where he was, and we were receptive to him. Now, after he left our school, there was not, we didn't have elementary at that point in my school, although I added it up through 8th grade towards the time that I left in 2013. So Robbie went to public school. And he was someone, as all children are, that need to move. And he had had all this experience of being allowed to touch and feel and explore and carry and move and be with adults. And then he was I mean, it wasn't like I'm not saying this to be disrespectful in any way of public education, but this was just his experience in moving into that environment where he was told there were desks and he had to sit in the desks. He couldn't get up and move when he wanted to move. Everyone moved at the same time. He was eventually given a diagnosis. Many things happened that were quite different from his early life. So in returning to Ananda, I felt it right away, and I still sense it as a healing for him. And he described coming into a nurturing environment where his son expresses his needs and desires, and that himself and his wife has shared as well, that they feel for them as well as their son, that they're growing and thriving as adults, and they see this in their child into a caring, curious, and explorative person within this environment. I mean, it could be my environment is what it is. I know my environment, but it could be anywhere where there's this way of being with children, I would say. So I wanted to share that with you. And was there anything else? Um, oh, the the other thing that Robbie brought up, and this could be through time with lifestyle, is that children in Montessori, and at Ananda, especially, the adults are all there. So you might have 10 children and 10 adults. But even if it's the one teacher or two teachers, the children will question and question. And then we as guides, our work is to prepare environments where they can go and find those answers. So rather than give the answer right away, we will maybe give a little direction, but be preparing the environment through our observation. So they will question. It doesn't mean they're questioning authority, but it could be seen that way in other environments. The last thing I want to say before I stop sharing so we can come together is that with my own children, with their children, as parents, I see many of these same things where they are they're in collaboration with their child. They are learning from their child as a teacher and an observation, and they are giving space for their child to have expression of his or her needs and desires, and many, many other things, as well as choice and a lot else. But those were the slides I wanted to share with you. So let's stop that and come back together. So values as a lifestyle in Montessori.
Any questions, or does anyone want to share their own experiences or observations? Feel free to drop it in the chat as well if you can't unmute. Then no questions.
I just wanted to add and say that just listening to your and hearing your experience has been so eye-opening for me, because I didn't grow up going to Montessori school, and me and my husband, we both grew up going to public school. So this is kind of like the first that we get to, like, we're so grateful that we get to send our son to a Montessori school. So to hear the experience of someone who has come back has been so eye-opening for me. And just to add on to that, I have some experience serving as a guide, but on the religious side. And it's been so interesting to be able to observe and sit back and watch in that regard. Just being a catechist formed in Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. Not sure if you guys have heard of that. But I've got level 1 formation training in that regard. And so I've just had some experience of Montessori through like serving as a guide in the religious classroom, and all of the prepared environment. It's just so interesting to sit back and watch each child work and see where they're at. But you know, it's we're always learning, right? So it's just I have to like learn to sit back and like really learn the needs and desires of that child, but also like where can I lead them in the next work? Has been also interesting for like, you know, in the religious aspect. Um, because in that age 3 to 6 classroom, we have like a practical life shelf and then more religious aspects of that formation. So yeah, it's been so interesting not being a Montessori child, but being a parent and a guide in the religious classroom, religious Montessori classroom. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. You know, one thing I'll add, what you're saying is that for me, as a parent, one thing I noticed in myself was when my children entered into the doorway, the physical doorway in their school, that I entered a doorway myself of my own Montessori process, of my own Montessori journey. So as parents, as guides, I feel that I've heard this not just from myself, there's an initiation that happens within us, and it can, as we move through it and in our own unique ways, then we will have certain experiences. But that you're on that journey as well.
Any other questions, comments, or just shared experiences before we wrap up for the evening? All right, wonderful. If you're watching the recording to this, I'll be posting this later on the same registration page that people use to sign up. If you have any questions, you can leave that in the comment section, and we'll do our best to address those or connect you with Pamela. Thank you so much to Pamela for presenting. This is such an insightful topic and one that we haven't visited at a parenting series before, so it was a nice discussion and kind of gives some new perspectives on Montessori and what the Montessori parent experience is, what the Montessori student experience is. So we really appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom with us, Pamela.
You're very welcome. So nice to be with all of you.
As I said, I'll be posting this recording tomorrow, so if you want to reference it, if you want to rewatch it, you can access it on the same registration page as before, and I'll be sharing it with Pamela as well. And her information is on that page as well. So if you want to learn more about Pamela and anything that she can offer, it's all up there as well. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for joining. Really enjoyed the session. Thanks again, Pamela.
You're welcome.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.